tell you, my skylights are really iced over.
Yeah. That's fine.
Adrian, MC, we told him.
Sally sent me. Ready? Okay. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the Saline City Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. Will the recording secretary please call the roll?
Young.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
Fosdick.
Here.
Morrow.
Here.
Gearbaugh.
Here.
Heft. Here. Lafort. Here.
Staff present tonight are Community Development Director Atkin and Recording Secretary Katnick. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as distributed?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 8th, 2025 as submitted unless there are amendments?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Public comment. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comments. The person is requested but not required to state their name and address for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Seeing no comments, we'll start with some unfinished business. 25-02, application from AMK Holdings LLC for a combined site plan review at 6971 North Maple Road, Saline, Michigan 48176. Parcel numbers 18-12-31-205-019. In our packet, we had a report dated February 5th, 2025, Community Development Director Adkin, and a memo dated February 3rd, 2025, from OHM Advisors Boss and Moritz. Chris.
Yes. So we've seen this a number of times. The applicant has made changes to the site plan, moved the buildings a little bit. They still meet all the setback requirements. Added some landscaping around the detention basin, provided the turn radius, provided a detail for the dumpster enclosure, basically addressed all the comments we had at the last month's meeting from a zoning standpoint. I don't want to attempt to speak for OHM as far as comments that they provided. The one issue we have that needs to be addressed is the parking was reduced, but now it's under. There are a couple hashed out areas in the parking that are not in front of a garage door or a door. Possibly put in another two, right now they're short three. So there's some options in there for the planning commission to consider, be it considered as is with the option to defer those areas for parking or to include those parkings and then accept it as is, or I think it was require 13 spaces be provided minimum. Other than that, I from the site plan standpoint, our recommendation is to approve this with conditions that any of the zoning and planning items are addressed, and same with the OHM. They're not going to alter the site plan, but those conditions, once they meet the satisfaction of us and OHM, final site plan, then we can bring that back for signatures.
Great, thank you. Other questions for the Community Development Director?
Just a couple. Chris, can you specify, I don't know where on this drawing, where those additional deferred parking spaces would be?
They're near the barrier-free spaces. They're the hashed
So there's no indication of putting additional spaces behind the building or in front of the detention pond?
Correct.
And then one other clarification. You and I had talked about this. The additional hydrant, has anybody determined where that's supposed to be located in the public right-of-way or on the private?
That's what the fire chiefs, fire hydrant near the entrance, near Maple Road.
But he didn't indicate whether it should be public or private?
That's something that needs to be determined because there is mention of in the OHM report, of a 20-foot wide easement minimum, and I believe there's a 12-foot, is that right? I guess the confusion there is if there was intent to turn this over to the city, or what the purpose of the easement is for. Do you have any knowledge of it being part of the city system, more on the private side?
Is that something that we should place as a condition and defer to the city engineer, or how would you handle that?
Yeah, we can do that, and I can speak with Tesha to find out if that's part of the plan.
Okay.
I made that conversation that Tesha and MC had. I'm not aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Additional discussion? Is there a motion on the table to acknowledge receipt of the report dated February 5th, 2025 from Community Development Director Atkin and the memo dated February 3rd, 2025 from OHM Advisors Boss and Moritz?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. We will have applicant developer comments, limited to 10 minutes, if you'd like to come up and speak.
I don't necessarily have any comments. I guess if there's any questions for me, it sounds like the hydrant, the only thing that I know for a fact is that in talking with fire chief, the hydrant was put on site, whether that's public or private or what, I don't know. But I know that we agreed to put, for what he required, the hydrant in there and also put in the hammerhead. So based on this drawing, at least the fire chief said this is good with him, whether it's public or private hydrant, I don't know. It does change, I think, from talking with engineering a little bit about how the size of the services and different things that need to come in, but we're willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish that.
Is there any discussion about the parking, since we're under the 13 that are required?
Yeah, so it was my understanding from before, it's not, because we had this like idea or thought about having to put up some wall to shield parking if we put more on the Maple side of the building to the west. And we have room to put more parking in front of that building, but we thought it might not look that great, so we're happy to put in more parking. We don't anticipate the buildings that we have there having a need for more parking than we have on the drawing. But there's room to put more, we'll be happy to do that, I guess.
Any questions for the developer?
No, answered mine. So you're fine with deferring, and if we should require it in the future, that'd be better. I mean, that's kind of what we'd like to go for, so.
Yep, yeah, we're good with that.
It'd just be a matter of restriping what's there.
Right. Yeah, it's more, I mean, the pavement's a pavement, it's just changing the stripes, yeah.
Okay. And then I was just asking our city development director, the timing of the abandonment of the septic tanks and drain field, those will be removed prior to any new building construction?
Yeah, the plan is to abandon all current systems, demolish the buildings, and get to ground zero before we start doing any building or construction.
Perfect, thank you.
And the timeline on that, assuming we get conditional approval, is roughly 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Start doing that work. We're waiting for the weather to obviously break and stuff.
Great.
Additional questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I move to open the public hearing at 7:10, affording the public the opportunity to speak to this issue.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Public comment period is open.
Move to close.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion, public comment period is closed. Additional questions or comments from the Planning Commission?
I mean, I think in terms of the parking, if the idea was that of the 5 total suites, they're approximately expecting 2 employees per suite. That's 10 spots, and then 2 spots that are ADA accessible I think, because there's no guarantee that 2 employees or 2 people working there, right, would qualify for those spots. I feel like 12 spots total feels like a variation or a variant from the requirement that would be okay, in my mind.
By federal law, they're only required to have 1 ADA parking space. Anything, I think it's 12, or excuse me, 20, 1 space per 20 parking spaces for barrier-free, but I understand that they put the 2 in, to 1 in front of each building, because it has to be the shortest distance.
The only issue I see with the parking, it's not just restriping because we had asked for the bumpers. So, I mean, that's just steel that has to be put in there, but it's not the end of the world. But it's also not in front of the garage doors. Any additional question? Yes?
For me, preserving the frontage, if they were going to put spaces in front, can you put parking spaces in front of this, or is that setback?
Setback is, I think they're right at it, at 50 feet.
As long as we're deferring them to those other 2 locations that you were talking about, I prefer that versus deferred parking in front of the building.
Yeah, they're required 50 feet of front yard setback, and they're right at the 50-foot mark.
Okay, so that's fine. You'd mentioned something about a wall too, or retainer wall or something. Did you want to explain
On either
this?
side of the entryway, there's I believe it's a 3-foot tall brick wall, 12 feet on one side, maybe 20-some feet on the other. The ordinance states that any parking visible from the public right-of-way should be screened with a wall or other means necessary, or could be landscaping or anything like that that the planning commission would deem appropriate.
Is there any additional fencing going along the south side of the property? I saw something where it said posted.
There's
it said posted.
existing fencing
Existing.
there. Yeah.
Okay.
I believe that fencing is on the southern neighbor's property.
For me, the only, one less comment, I would just like to make a clarification and add to the conditions that a determination be made based on whether or not that additional fire hydrant and that system is public or private. Because if it's in the public right away, it probably needs to be public. If it's not, then we shouldn't be the responsible for it at that time, treating it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll clarify that when, because they'll have to tap into the water main, so it'll be clarified at that point.
Okay. Additional comments or questions? Is there a motion on the table to approve, not approve, or approve with conditions the combined site plan at 6971 North Maple Road, Saline, Michigan 48176, parcel number 18-12-31-205-019?
Move we approve with conditions.
What conditions would we like to add to this? There's the question about the parking, whether 10 is adequate, 12, or require the minimum number of 13.
I think 10 is adequate.
Does anybody have any discussion about that? So leaving it at 10, we're okay with? Okay. So we'll stick with the 10 parking spaces, add the 1 additional hydrant to the site at the entrance near Maple, and then the determination of if that's a public or private hydrant will be a determination condition?
Yes, I would recommend that for the parking spaces to have the other 2 as deferrals, in case they have to increase it. That way, it doesn't blur the line of them having to come back and amend it. They end up making those 2 areas parking spaces, it's taken care of in the condition.
So is that the first bullet point under number 1? We're okay with that? Okay. Mr. Carroll, are you okay with the conditions that were placed?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second, just a clarification. Do we need to include in the motion about the deferred parking the specific locations? It says that the available space is reserved for deferred parking. Is that already identified somewhere in the site plan?
the review, I'm pretty specific about the locations in front of building B, near the center, and along the east end of the parking area.
A friendly amendment to that to make sure we identify those properly.
It's the only two available areas that could have another parking space.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations. Public hearing number 25-05, application from Jason Stoops for a special land use to permit churches and other institutions for religious worship at 450 East Michigan Avenue, Saline, Michigan, 48176, parcel number 18-12-31-360-004. In our packet, we had a report dated February 7th from Community Development Director Atkin.
Yes, this is a site on the, more or less the south side of East Michigan Avenue. Suite B, they've been readdressed. Well, there's the main address and there's suites, so this will be the furthest one away from East Michigan Avenue. I think it was last Nutra something. Yeah, nutrition. So part of this is, which isn't involved with special land use. Well, let me go back. This is in the SPA1 zone. In the SPA1 zone, there are a variety of uses that are permitted based on the ordinance. Uses that are permitted in other districts are also permitted in the SPA1 zone. So this type of use is a special land use in the R1 district, which would be special land use in the SPA1 zone as well. So that's how we got to this point with it. Coupled with this actual use is a coffee shop, coffee house, which will operate, I believe it was Tuesday through Friday. I put the hours in the review. And then the religious worship will be Fridays at 6:30 to 9:30 and Sundays from 11 to 3. No, the other hours will be for the coffee house. So, looking at the site plan, the floor plan, and this has gone through the building as well as far as the other use. The criteria, they meet the criteria for special land uses in the SPA or in general for SPA. So you make the recommendation that Plan Commission recommends approval to City Council.
Any questions for Community Development Director? Nope. If there are no questions, is there a motion on the table to acknowledge receipt of the report dated February 7th, 2025?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Applicant developer comments limited to 10 minutes per person, to 10 minutes if you'd like to come up and speak.
Again, hi, I'm Jason Stoops, and nice to meet everyone tonight. Thank you for your time. But yes, we're seeking approval to have a worship service in addition to the coffee shop, like was already mentioned. It's just a place to have worship for those that would like to come out and join us. It's open to the public, to all. Again, it's in addition to our coffee shop that we're going to have Friday evenings and Sundays, just what was already mentioned. So we feel that it's, it's going to be good for the community. It's for those that would just like to come in and, those that maybe need prayer. We're there to pray for people, to encourage people in the scripture, and just a variety of things. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you so much for your time.
Any questions? Yes.
Jason, thanks for being here. Can I ask you a few questions about the business model? Primarily, I'm asking these questions for my edification and for the public's. So as Community Development Director Adkins indicated, so the coffee shop would be open Tuesday through Friday?
Through Saturday.
Through Saturday?
Tuesday through Saturday.
Okay. And I'm sorry if I missed it. What were the hours of operation?
Currently, we're looking at 9 to 4.
And what amenities do you plan to offer in addition to coffee? Are there sandwiches, baked goods?
Baked goods from Dexter Bakery.
Okay.
We're just gonna house their donuts and their baked goods. And that's really it, just coffee and baked goods.
And I'm looking at a rendering in our packet. I think it's, actually doesn't have a page number. So the kitchen, counter, restrooms, utility rooms, they're in the rear of the space. I haven't been in the space in quite some time. I remember it as here on camera back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Which was the business that existed in that space for many, many years, back in the 80s and 90s, or probably into the early 2000s. So the cafe section is towards the rear, and then there's seating which would be also utilized for worship and prayer, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
With like a little elevated stage, pulpit, lectern?
There's no stage, it's just a piece of carpet, same floor level as everyone else. So nothing would change as far as the seating. So when people would come in for the coffee, during our business hours, everything will be the same for the worship part of it.
So nothing is reconfigured?
No.
Okay. When you make the transition from restaurant, cafe to worship. And what's the approximate number of individuals who could be accommodated during a worship or prayer service?
It's hard to say. It's whatever I guess I get approved for a certificate of occupancy, the occupancy load. It's hard to come up with that number.
On the architectural plans, I believe the capacity was 55.
More than I thought. I'm guessing that's pretty tight in that space. And if you had 55,
As of right now, I have, what do we have, 50? It's about 55 seats in there. And it's spaced out, it's not too tight. Nutrition Ave, I do remember they had a load of 71 people allowed in there. So I think 55 is a great number, just to answer your question.
my apologies, do you have a congregation now?
Actually, not right now. We're working on it. We've had actually a good number of people reach out to us since the sign got put out at our location that are interested in coming out, being a part of the services, as well as the coffee shop. So we're seeing already a really good response.
And the hours that are designated for worship and prayer, remind me, those are Saturday evening and late morning, early afternoon, Sunday.
Worship would be Friday evenings at 6:30, and we're only starting that once a month on Friday evenings.
Okay.
We want to go into every week, every Friday, but starting out it would just be once a month. And then Sundays is 11 o'clock in the morning.
And it's one worship service?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you answering my questions. Just want to learn a little bit more about the venture. Thank you.
Yeah, just for clarification, so in the worship service, you will not be removing the tables?
No, I'm not removing the tables.
Okay.
No.
Can I follow up with that? Because when I counted here, it looks like there's right now, at least the way this picture is drawn, there's like seating for 40.
40?
That's what that looks like right in the picture, the way that the picture is drawn. So I'm just wondering if this is like, if there's more, if this is actually not what it looks like right now, or?
We have it for 50. Yeah.
The occupant load is 55.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, I guess I'm wondering if this is what it looks like now, or was there an opportunity for other sort of seating configurations, or like rows, or?
There's a total of 2, we have room for 2 more tables with 4 chairs in each table. We don't have that in there yet, but.
Okay.
So I have a better idea of the business, not the business model, actually, the church model. Would this be available for funerals and weddings and that type of thing too?
That's a good question. I would have to say probably not for funerals. I don't know how we would be able to accommodate that. Weddings, possibly, depending on the size. But we may have to maybe use another facility for that, more than likely.
Thank you.
Chris, is there any issue with parking? I know it says that there's about 26 spots with 55 people. I know it's staggered from normal business hours, but do you see any issue that it might be a problem?
Currently, no, because the Suite 1, which is the largest one where Huntington Bank was, it's vacant. And I think it's a employment service in the middle or something of the sort.
Actually, we're the only ones in the building right now.
So
So,
I don't foresee, based on the hours, I don't foresee any issues with parking, but without knowing what other uses might be in there, it's hard to say. But I really do not anticipate there being any issue. I really don't.
Thank you.
And just to comment on, I didn't broach the subject of funerals and weddings and things of that because of how this was described just as a worship area, not as a church or anything like that with, a big congregation, not a traditional type church. So I didn't address those issues because it was basically worship.
So can those conditions be placed on this, that it, because of the size and such, it can only be used?
Conditions that are reasonable can be placed on the motion, yes.
Additional discussion? Thank you very much.
thank you.
Is there a motion to open the public comment period at 7:28?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Seeing no public comment, is there a motion to close the public comment period at 7:29?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Comments or questions from Planning Commission members? Yes.
For me, I think one of the concerns that we have is all this area is commercial business. And I mean, even the city and the council have previously discussed this becoming a potential redevelopment zone in all those areas. As long as I think this is being a rental type situation and the impact that potentially this could still occur in this area, that's the one thing. My only couple conditions I would have is that there would be, the limitation would be to the hours as identified in this current proposal, that it be limited to the type of worship service that's been discussed previously by the Community Development Director, and then also that the fire chief and whatever be involved in the authorization of the occupancy to verify that what's happening in the tables and everything else in it are safe, because that's always been an issue when you start putting furniture and everything in terms of the occupancy. And I'm wanting to make sure that, because knowing what I've seen happen in other businesses, or not businesses, but situations like this, those are the things that are the most concern, is the tables and chairs and anything else that's in around there in the event of an emergency.
The exits, I believe that, again, that's on the building side, and our building inspector's been going through that. I think there's been conversation with the fire chief, because they have to have a direct access, ingress and egress. But yeah, we'll clarify that.
Yes.
I think one of Mr. Gearbaugh's additional conditions probably alleviates some of my concerns, and it's a suggestion of limiting operations to the hours designated in the memorandum. The petitioner is indeed correct that he, if approved, would be the only occupant of a 3-suite building. I have been in the middle suite in the past decade. That's relatively small. The space that was recently vacated by a bank, for those who have been around for a number of years will recall that that was a Pizza Hut for many years. I wish it still was a Pizza Hut. But point being, there could be, that space could accommodate a restaurant or certainly a more dynamic, well-used business than a bank. And so part of my concern would be parking. If you have a popular coffee shop and then a place of worship that is meeting not only on Friday evenings, but also during a bulk of the day on Sunday, and a facility that can accommodate upwards of 50 people, that really does put a strain on parking if those other 2 suites are leased. So I just want to be mindful of that. Again, I don't think there's a quick or easy solution to that particular problem, but I do think enumerating as a condition, limiting operations to the hours outlined in the memo helps somewhat. But I would ask that the petitioner be cognizant of these concerns and hopefully be flexible and accommodating if or when other businesses or ventures lease the 2 additional spaces.
And if there's if that situation comes up, we can mediate a kind of parking agreement with surrounding businesses during certain hours that won't impede on their business as well.
It's a very interesting concept. If you're able to move forward, I wish you well.
Thank you.
Additional discussion? Yes.
What is the maximum usage of, number of people allowed in the building? Somebody
The
said.
building as a whole,
Yes. No, this suite.
55.
Oh, so it's not, somebody said 71, I didn't know.
No, 55 is the maximum occupancy for this 800 square foot space.
So if really removing the tables and just putting all chairs there would violate that number.
If it was over 55, they're
It would.
capped out at 55, yes.
Okay. All right.
Additional discussion?
I was just gonna ask if they end up with the idea that this is potentially releasing these other suites, is there the possibility of just sort of like removing I'm assuming the suite 4 is
ATM.
yeah, is there some possibility of just creating parking in that area and
Yeah,
removing?
I mean, it's a possibility. I don't know if that ATM is still in operation.
Is that a Huntington Bank?
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility because it does take up a significant amount of real estate.
That does raise one question with that ATM. I don't know whether that was allowed only because a bank was there and whether it would be considered it's the issue of whether that should be there and continuing. So that may be, it's a different issue from a side of this, but we should look at that site plan in terms of what is it?
That was, I think, 1991 when that was put in. I'm trying to find my,
No, much later than that.
2000?
Yeah.
No, 91 might,
I noted it in the
The
packet.
bank wouldn't have gone in there until,
Did Mercantile put that in?
No, there was prior to Huntington?
Yes.
Possibly. I couldn't read
there was a different bank in there besides Huntington.
Yeah, before that
there was a
was
number. I
Mercantile.
just going back through.
well, there wasn't a bank in that structure until the late 90s.
Right. And I think that was Mercantile Bank.
But there why would there have been an ATM there before the bank leased the property? I mean, I guess it
That's a
could,
good question.
Oh,
Yeah.
ATM was, I'm sorry, the building was 1981, the ATM was 98.
that makes sense.
I thought it was in the 90s.
Yeah, that makes
It's a separate issue from this, but that is a concern on this whole site as we're looking at it, in changes of uses and such that may not be a use that's allowed any longer.
Additional discussion?
Again, I agree with my colleagues here that the issue for me is the other additional uses of space. So even though it sounds good that you can make arrangements with the other businesses surrounding, we've run into that problem with the marijuana shop and some of that down on the west side. So the issue ends up being, if it's operating 9 to 4 and there ends up being a lot more, I don't know how we resolve that, truthfully, because we should have some other count for space related on the size of the building and what the former use was. But I don't know if that ever was revised after a bank was put in there and.
Yeah, the bank isn't going to require a lot because it would be considered office space and the usable floor area is minimal.
In likelihood, it was designed for the restaurant and then a retail business.
Yeah, in a restaurant, the calculation for a church is, and even I believe the coffee shop is 1 parking space per 3 occupants. So restaurant is very similar. So not knowing how many tables they could fit in that front, it's hard to determine how many parking spaces would be required.
So really, basically it'll go back to the property owner to determine what happens when he goes to lease those other spaces. Okay. Or her, or him, or whatever.
Additional discussion. All right, is there a motion on the table to approve, not approve, or approve with conditions the special land use at 450 East Michigan Avenue, Saline, Michigan, 48176?
This would be a recommendation to City Council, sorry.
To recommend to City Council, okay.
It would be on the, if approved, it would be on the March 3rd agenda?
Yes, I could get it on.
You had mentioned some conditions. Would you like to move?
I'll make a recommendation with the following conditions. One, that the occupancy be reviewed and confirmed by the fire chief and our building officials. The hours be limited based upon the memo that's attached at this present time. For the worship service, I would say, the 9 to 4, it's trying to figure out, the 9 to 4 is a shop, which is a permitted use in there, so that seems like those hours would be reasonable to be adjusted. However, it's the ones where we'd have a lot more use and such there. Be limited to the hours as identified currently for Friday and Sunday. And the activities be limited to those proposed currently, which would allow based upon the occupancy. I don't know how to limit that. We were talking about worshiping service before. As you start to have offering weddings and funerals and all those type of things, I don't know if that falls into another type of use or not.
That would be an incidental use to the primary. Again,
Again, it's all going to be limited to the size based upon the occupancy, correct?
occupancy is going to really limit this, what can be happening there.
Although I would assume that because it's a coffee shop, the ability to like have like certain types of funerals, or there's probably like some conflict
true,
there,
yeah.
just from a health
Yeah,
standpoint.
because you have been working with Washtenaw County Health Department, correct? Yeah, I thought I saw some documentation for that.
Yeah, so I just assume that
I
I
don't know.
take care of itself, wouldn't be an issue.
I'm sorry, is there a motion on the floor?
So, well, I gave those, like, I can make the motion about the fire chief and, occupancy being confirmed from based on, occupancy must be reviewed and confirmed by the fire chief and our building officials, city building officials. The hours limited per as identified in the memo.
The worship hours, correct?
Worship hours, correct. And I don't know if we need to say anything about the incidentals at this point in time, up to the rest of the council, but I'll make those 2 first conditions, and if anyone has anything else, then at this point, I've made that motion to move forward with the recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations. No discussion tonight and no absences. The next meeting is scheduled for March 12th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Is there a motion on the table to adjourn at 7:40?
Move.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, all be safe.
You made it.